Hey, what's up, little gamers? It's your guy Bryce with the Electronic Gamers Night, and I want to talk about your controllers, not your hands. Because we've got a lot of crazy things going on in the world, and a lot of people are telling you to wash your hands, but how many people are telling you to wash your controller? You guys game a lot. I game a lot, which means these things get kind of nasty, extra grody and grimy. And just a warning, anybody who's actually squeamish, you might want to look away here soon. So I've got some toothpicks here. I've got some. This is one of my special mixtures. It is alcohol and water, half and half, 50. So I just split it up and put it in a bottle. Disinfectant wipes. I like the lemon flavored. Makes my controller smell nice. Lysol for quick spray downs. Because sometimes, you just want to, someone's been sick touching your controller. Just give it a quick spray, rub it down. You're good to go. Well, you're good to go after it dries, of course. Now, you don't want to spray a lot. And you don't want to use too much of this rubbing alcohol. The 50% rubbing alcohol and water combination, the alcohol will actually help the water evaporate quicker. And you don't want to just dab it on there. You don't want to just throw it all on. All right, now to be as completely sanitary as possible, I'm going to wear some gloves. And I'm going to take my first controller, which is my most used controller. I never really think about it, but I definitely play more PlayStation games than anything else. So my PlayStation controller is going to be my first scrub down. And I will warn you guys, this is going to get grody. So to start off, I'm going to go for my toothpicks. And, I've almost forgot I also needed some Q-tips. Because Q-tips are my most usable way to get into those nooks and crannies. But we're going to start off with a toothpick here. And we're going to get into the most disgusting part of this. We're going to knock this out of the park right now. This seam right here, that's where your hand rubs up against a lot while you're gaming. So a lot of dead skin cells and just grodiness gets in there. So, a lot of times you get older gamers who don't want to let their little brothers and sisters play because little kids' fingers are disgusting. But you can see just from me using my controller as much as I do, a lot of dead skin cells get stuck in between this. This isn't my first PlayStation controller that came with my PS4, but it's still disgusting. I might clean these things up before a tournament, and if it's been a while, this buildup is there, and this buildup is nasty. I guarantee you, if you take a toothpick and scrub in between those corners of one of your controllers right now, your favorite game console's controller is going to be this disgusting. So I recommend gamers that you do this once a month for a deep clean, and then the Lysol spray once or twice a week. So I'm going to go over to the other side. I'm going to do the same thing over there. For some reason, the left-hand side is never as grody as the right-hand side, which I would never understand. So after that, you want to look it over in any other little nooks and crannies that's like only a toothpick could get into. You're going to go into those and just do the little toothpick thing. You're just going to tweeze, and get all that nastiness out of your controller's cracks. Oh, God, it's so disgusting. And it just keeps going and going. It gets worse and worse as it goes. Now, the toothpick method is also a good method to get into that big screen touchpad, because sometimes you get little crumbs and little skin cells stuck in between there. But this time around, it wasn't that bad. So I'm going to go over it one more time. I'm going to make sure I didn't miss anything. And now we're going to move on to some rubbing alcohol to really get in there and start sterilizing. You don't want to do this too much. And I've heard of people using bleach. If you're going to use bleach, you're going to use very minute amounts of bleach. Because bleach is so strong that it's going to take that paint right off of that PlayStation controller. That X, square, and circle button will be gone in no time. I don't even use a lot of alcohol, which is why I rub it down between 50-50. So as you can see there, I made a mess, which is my mistake, because normally I have a container to keep the alcohol in while I do this with. But I'm going to start off by rubbing down on the touchpad, especially on the oily parts. That alcohol will really cut through the oil, and it just makes your controller look so nice and pretty when it's done. Now, I'm really going to make sure that I move these joysticks around, because sometimes dust and crumbs gets in between there, which is the bad thing about gaming while snacking. If you get really nasty crumbs, especially if you are a Cheetos fan like my son is, those crumbs can get into your controller and can really mess up the motherboard. So don't do that. One, don't do that. Two, make sure you clean these on a regular. I mean, oh God, just look at that. That Q-tip is getting used. Okay, so I'm going to clean up my mess a little bit and get this alcohol off of my handy dandy cutting board. Wipe. And I'm going to stop being lazy. I'm going to go get my little cleaning tray. I like to recycle things. This is probably just something that I took out of some sort of I think it was like a salad. It had all my fixings in it. All right, so I want to make sure that my trigger buttons also don't have any crumbs in them. Because again, gaming and snacking go hand in hand. I'm going to check in between all of my buttons, every little crack and nook and cranny. This controller wasn't that bad. I've seen it way worse. If my son gets a hold of it on a good day, or if oh my God, if I take them to a tournament, they have to be cleaned before and definitely after every time we do a tournament. I even get into the screws. I don't know why. I just feel like it. It feels good to get that Q-tip in there. Now, like I said earlier, if you want to take some Lysol spray or some sort of other disinfectant spray, just give it a quick little spritz. You don't want to do a lot, just a 1, 2, and you're done. Then you're going to take a smooth, probably like I like to use a screen cleaning cloth. I have a dedicated one just for cleaning my controllers. And I'm just going to gently go over it. I'm not going to scrub. I'm not going to do anything hard or rash. I'm just going to polish. All I'm doing right now is polishing and pushing around that sanitary cleaner. You want to make sure you go over and buff everything, and you get as much of that sanitary cleaner off as you can. Though it dries really fast, you just want to get that polish off. You don't want to let it get into your system. Because again, if you oversaturate it, if you do a lot of the liquid, it will get in there, and there is a possibility that you could ruin your game controller. But cleaning your controllers is healthy for you, so you have to get this done every once in a while. All right, now look how pretty that is. And unfortunately, while I was doing this, I accidentally turned the controller on. But just look at that. It looks so much better now. You're going to feel happier just holding that. All right, I'm going back in with the old toothpick because, again, dead skin cells. It irks my nerves. All right, so that's it for my PlayStation controller. It is looking fresh. It is looking clean. It is ready for this weekend's Resident Evil binger I'm going to be doing. Lord help me with Resident Evil because I'm already terrified of it. But we're just going to sit that down. We're going to move on. We've got our Xbox controller. So my Xbox controller does not get used as much as my PlayStation. No offense, Microsoft. But it still looks pretty nasty. I think the last time this controller was used, it was actually at a tournament. And I neglected it. I did not clean it like I should have. These are super old Dollar General batteries, which I probably had to run out and get at the last minute because I normally use Energizer. So these batteries look good, and the inside of the case looks great. There's no corrosion. You definitely want to look in here to look for corrosion because if one of these batteries decides to leak, it can completely ruin a controller. Okay? I've got ways of cleaning up a corroded controller, but unfortunately, I couldn't show you guys that because none of my controllers have corrosion issues right now. So, I'm grabbing a toothpick. I'm doing the old school thing. I'm going in and I'm going to scrub. But this time, I'm going to start on the controller, which had a lot. Hello, Sophie. How are you? So, as I'm recording this voiceover, my cat, Sophelia, decided to come and join me. That was her meowing in the background. But I digress. We're going to keep moving, and we're going to keep scrubbing out all that nastiness from around the inside of this controller. And so once we do that, it's just going to be another hop, skip, and jump right into the same routine with the last controller. We're going to scrub it down, except for this time, instead of using the sanitary spray, we're going to use the Lysol wipes, which is really surprising because the Lysol wipes are way more saturated with cleaning supply than just giving it a quick spray of Lysol. So depending on what you get, you need to keep in mind of how saturated you're going to actually put this cleaner onto your controller. So in a second here, I'm going to go over and grab for a Lysol wipe. Oh, no, wait. I actually go in with another round of Q-tip for this one. Now, the Xbox One's controllers, the letters are on the inside of the buttons. So for all those buttons, you don't have to worry about scraping off the paint. But the color coding on the inside, that's on the outside. So make sure you worry about, you try to mind that. Don't scrub it off. If you accidentally scrub that off and you run across the game that goes off of those color codes, you might be messing yourself up if you have a specialized controller like mine. All right, so I'm going into all the little nooks and crannies with this Q-tip, and I'm just doing my best to get in there and take out all the dust, dirt, and just nastiness because, it's just everywhere. I promise, guys, I'm not a germaphobe. All right, now we're into that Lysol wipe that I was talking about. Now we're going to go in with this wipe, and we're just going to give it a good little scrub everywhere across the controller. We're really just trying to distribute the cleaner the best we can. We're going to get onto the top of those thumb pads because those thumb pads were nasty. And we're going to scrub down the D-pad. Now the D-pad, especially on this controller, there are pretty wide gaps on it. You want to try and make sure that like you don't get, again, too much saturation, too much liquid to get into the controller. Or you want to make sure that you get in there and get out any sort of crumbs and nastiness again because controllers get gunked up. So we're about done with this controller. We've gotten pretty much everything that needed to be cleaned. We're going to go back over with the micro mesh, whatever these things are called. I have no idea. I just love them. They keep your controllers looking so nice without leaving scratches. So I'm going to go back over it, dry it all off, and then moving on to my last controller, which is a Nintendo Switch controller. I didn't do the Joy-Cons, which is very difficult, and honestly, I'm kind of scared of cleaning my Joy-Cons. I don't want to damage them because, you know, you get a lot of issues with your left Joy-Con drifting, and I'm tired of buying new Joy-Cons, so I'm kind of holding off on that. So again, last but not least, this is a wired Nintendo Switch controller. These are the ones that I like to use for tournaments. I think this one's only ever been used once. So the only other person who plays with it might be me and my son when we're playing Smash Brothers. But it stays pretty nice and is normally in a box. So this one looks good and it doesn't really need this, but I'm going to show you guys how to scrub it down anyway. Just doing the same old things. This time I'm just generally taking what cleaner is already on the micro mesh cloth and I'm just going over with it. Like there isn't a whole lot for me to clean off of this thing. It has a texture to it, and that texture looks kind of weird when it gets wet, but once it dries off, it's perfectly fine. So don't let that bother you. You got to make sure that you sanitize and keep your controllers nice and clean, because I'm pretty sure in this time of our life, they're getting used a lot. Okay, so again, this is a wired controller, and you don't necessarily have to do this, but this is just a pet peeve of mine. You're going to want to dust your controller wires too, because they get kind of nasty. So just take a mesh in your hand and go from one end to the other. Then go back with it and take your your drying cloth, and dry it back off the same way that you did the other way. From one end to the other. All right, little gamers, that is pretty much it. This is how you're going to keep your controllers nice and clean and nice and healthy. I definitely recommend doing this if you are having friends over, which with social distancing shouldn't really be a thing right now. You can definitely play with your friends online. But if you have to, just make sure that you're keeping things nice. All right, gamers, that's it for me. I'm out of here. Deuces.